The big idea for today is that academic versus general, the IELTS test, your speaking and listening are the same. So if you're practicing with a group, if you're practicing with people who are doing the general test, but you're doing the academic, that's fine. This also gives us some information about what kind of language we should really be using for the IELTS speaking. A lot of us are concerned about vocabulary and having academic vocabulary. That was a question that came in our last class. We don't need to be too concerned about having a super high level of vocabulary, but we do want a high level of communication. These two things are different, and we need to keep that in mind. We're not looking for the most academic vocabulary. We're looking for the most specific word, the most appropriate word for the situation. We're going to talk about those things right now, but what we need to know, it doesn't matter. If you're in general or academic, the speaking section is going to be the same. So what are these sections? We have 3 sections. In total, you're probably going to speak for between 10 to 15 minutes. For some people in the chat here, that probably sounds like a lot. For others, maybe not enough. Your questions will depend on how much time you are spending giving your answer. So for section 1, for example, they can ask you up to 12 questions. I have 7 listed because that's pretty normal. They want you to speak for 4 to 5 minutes answering these questions. For section 1 of 3, we can think of this as a warm-up. It is not designed to be that challenging. It's designed to get you speaking about something that you are very familiar with. For our examples, we have questions about family. So at this point, when you're trying to take the test, you should be able to speak about your family for 4 or 5 minutes. Who are they? What do they look like? Do we love them? Do they drive us crazy? Things like that. The normal things that you're able to speak about with your family, you should be able to do on the first section of the test. It's not only about family, but the topics are very predictable. Work, life, school or study, your family, your country, maybe your city or your hometown. And we're going to see some more examples for section 1s later on. But these are general topics. It's a warm-up. Let's look at a couple questions. Do you have a big family? Everyone here has a yes or no answer and a why for why you said yes or why you said no. How often are you able to see your family? Do you see them a lot? Do you not see them ever because you're already in Canada and they're still somewhere else? These are the kinds of questions that we should always be comfortable with before we take the test. The section 1s should never be surprising for us. That's our big idea here. As we move on, though, section 2s are a little bit more difficult because the question style is totally different. We are not having a conversation where the examiner asks a question and you answer. It's not like that. You have 1 minute to prepare a talk for 2 minutes. They will say that you can speak for 1 to 2 minutes. Don't listen to this. You want to speak for 2 minutes. You want to show as much of your language as possible. And this even goes, if we're not comfortable with our grammar, that's okay. Take the 2 minutes to show what you can do. It will be good at the end for your final score. You have 1 minute to prepare and you get to take notes. They'll give you a pencil or a pen and a piece of paper. Definitely take notes. Organize your notes in the same way as this question. So let's look at the question. We have 3 to 4 minutes in general, suggesting 1 minute to prepare, 2 minutes to talk. I would like you to describe something that you own, which is very important to you. You should say what that thing is, where you use it, where you got it from, and tell me why it's important. So in our 1 minute, we want to write our notes in that specific way to make sure that we answer the whole question. The thing that's very important to me is my cell phone. That's the answer for number 1. Where do you use it? Oh, I use it everywhere all the time. Sometimes I even use it too much. I've needed to tell myself to stop using it in certain situations. That's the answer for number 2. Number 3, where did I get it? Any kind of electronics store, wherever you got your phone. If we can be honest, we will be honest, because we can think faster about things that are actually true. And then why do I think it's important? Well, because I'm using it on Instagram Live right now. I use it for my work. I talk to my students. I call my mom. All the normal things that people do with their phones these days. That's why it's important. So I've satisfied all of the different answers on the question, and hopefully my notes allowed me to organize my answer as well. If I take my notes properly, the answer's already done for me. After this, there's going to be a couple follow-up questions that should feel like, instead of a warm up, it will be a warm down. So do you still use this phone? Will you ever replace that phone? Those are questions that will directly relate to the speaking that you did. So this can be a high anxiety situation, only having 1 minute and then needing to speak for 2. If you go beyond 2 minutes, the instructor will tell you, okay, that's enough. We want to have some finality to our answer. So when you're running out of time, accept that. Say a sentence that finishes your talk and allow it to feel finished. We don't want to have our answer cut off in the middle of a sentence because we've lost some kind of communication in that idea. One of the most clever, one of the most successful questions that I've heard someone answer this was a student of mine from Korea. He was always having trouble thinking about what he was going to talk about. So I asked him this question and he said his glasses, which immediately was an amazing answer. The most important thing to him is his glasses. Why? He uses them everywhere, so he can talk about anything. You can talk about the first time you put on the glasses and you realize, oh, I didn't see the world the way that it was. I got them from my eye doctor. You can talk a little bit about who your optometrist is, a nice option for vocabulary. And finally, why is it important? Because I use it for everything. If I went to the gym and I didn't have my glasses, nobody would be happy because I would be falling over, right? It was a great answer, a very thoughtful answer. But the best part of it was that it was real life. He was wearing his glasses. We knew it was true. And he could talk a lot about how important that was for him. So if you can speak about something real, always do something real instead of creating something. Because when we start creating, we run out of ideas, right? Maybe we say one thing and then we say something else that's the opposite. So if we can avoid creation and speak about something real, that's always a good idea. Finally, our section 3. So section 3, even though a lot of people have the most difficulty with section 2, section 3 is not easy either, but it is more conversational. So in section 1, the person asks a question, you give an answer. In section 3, it feels more conversational. The questions are a little more abstract, and maybe they're open-ended. So maybe it's not yes or no. Maybe it's more of an opinion or an idea or something like that. So in section 2, we were talking about an object that we can't live without. Section 3 will usually be a continuation of that idea for section 2. That's another reason that we want to be honest in section 2. So section 3 is not talking about one individual item anymore. What they are talking about is people being too attached to physical objects. So question 1, or maybe they'll say something like, we've been talking about an important object. Now I'd like to ask some questions about important objects. Are people too attached to physical things? Do you think that we're too focused on getting stuff? Are we too focused on buying things? Or maybe is having a lot of beautiful things a sign of having status in your country? We should be able to feel the difference between those questions in section 3 and the questions in section 1. These are no longer warm-up ideas. These are much bigger ideas where we need to test our vocabulary. If I'm answering the question of, is having many things a sign of status in your country? As an answer, I need to clarify that. Yeah, in my country, having a big, beautiful car could be a sign of having high status, but sometimes it could also be a sign that this person spent too much money on their car. And now maybe they don't have money for other things. So there's confusion there. If you go to someone's house and it's really big and beautiful, it could be a sign that they have overspent. But in another way, it could be a sign that they're working really hard or they have a great career. So we want to open up these questions a little bit more. They might be yes or no questions. They might not. So we have to be careful. And we have to remember that these are complex, abstract ideas. The question underneath here is also important. Here, I'll leave that up so we can see. But the question, can we use the same structures in all of the questions? Everybody wants to know, and the answer, of course, is not easy. It's yes and no. So in your practice, yeah, of course, we want you to be repeating your phrasal verbs, your casual phrases, your idioms. We want to repeat these 1,000 times to make them normal, but we don't want to use the same phrasal verb over and over and over in every section of the test. As a general rule, once or twice is okay, but we don't want to overuse because we want to avoid being repetitive, saying the same kinds of things over and over. We also want to avoid canned phrases. So what do I mean by canned phrases? Literally, the idea is like a can of food where we open it up and there's something inside. That's the idea with having a can of phrases that we open and they work in every situation. In our lives, that's nice. Even I have certain phrases that I use all the time. This is normal, but we don't want to be doing that for the test because you're not showing what you know. You're not showing off new vocabulary or new grammar. So avoid being repetitive. Once or twice is okay. Maybe not more than that. So that's our test. How do you get your score? That's what we care about, right? This is a point of big confusion for a lot of people, mostly because of the vocabulary that's being used here. Fluency and coherence, lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy, and we probably know pronunciation, right? But let's talk about these individually so we know what they're actually talking about in normal words. Fluency and coherence really means how well can you speak and do you make sense? That seems kind of basic, like making sense is basic, but it's really not. There's all different kinds of levels of coherence. We want to know, are you pausing a lot? Are you repeating a lot of your phrases? Are you taking a long time to think? A little bit is okay, but are you really, really losing time thinking? Are your answers logical, suggesting not just do your vocabulary words make sense, but also time-wise? If we're using words about time, do I understand what happened first, second, and third? Because that's very important for the logical understanding of your answer. And organized ideas. Are you able to separate an idea here from the idea over here? Or do they all kind of come together in a way that's confusing? So this is a general idea of your fluency and coherence score. Are you speaking well? And are you making sense? Lexical resource is another fancy word, but really it's your vocabulary. Are you using the best word for each situation? We're going to talk more about vocabulary because it's such a heavy focus for so many people. So many people feel like we don't have the right vocabulary. But using the best word for the best situation is not about high-level vocabulary. It's about being specific. If I'm at the library, I want to refer to the person who works there as the librarian. I don't want to call her the employee of the library because the most specific word is librarian. That's the idea of lexical resource. Does the correct word come up quickly in your mind? That's it. To go down one more, grammatical range and accuracy. Range means how much you have, from easy to complex. So at the most basic idea is our tenses, right? Some of the first things that we learn in English are simple present compared to our present perfect, compared to our past perfect continuous. Are we using a wide variety of grammar? Are we using a wide variety of different kinds of structures for different kinds of situations? And then if we do make an attempt, let's say that we use the present perfect continuous, do we use it properly? Or could we use another tense in a more effective way? That's the whole idea. So if you haven't considered this question in particular, are you using tenses effectively? This is kind of the key to boosting your score, at least 1-2 points, depending on who you are. Using your tenses and time, finding your grammar structures that maybe you love. A lot of people love to speak in the second conditional because it allows us to speak about something imaginary. Maybe you have some favorite structures that you can really become comfortable with to show off. You don't need to use everything, but you need to be comfortable with the things you use. And then finally, a big deal, pronunciation. We know this word. Are you making the right sounds for the words that you're speaking? You can use all the wrong words, but with good pronunciation. And maybe your lexical resource score will be low, but your pronunciation score will be high. So that's something to keep in mind. We'll talk a lot about pronunciation today, especially because most of us, I think, are still from Brazil here. We're going to talk about pronunciation from a Brazilian perspective, with a particular idea of this here. With a particular idea of, is your accent typical from the place that you are from? So this is a big confusion because, especially in a country like Canada, everyone has a different accent. Having an accent is not bad. It just shows that you're from someplace else, right? But the goal of accent training or accent reduction, whatever we want to call it, the goal is to have someone listen to your English and not guess where you're from. Maybe you could be from Italy, maybe you could be from Spain, maybe Brazil. We don't know, right? So for example, we'll talk about this later, but the word restaurant, pronouncing the R sound as an H sound. For the ears of the tester, they immediately know, oh, this person's from Brazil. That's a Portuguese-speaking person. So we don't want to use those typical error pronunciations. That's an important thing to think of. And also obvious, repeated pronunciation problems. If you have a pronunciation mistake and then you correct yourself, that's actually good for your score. If you make a mistake, you need to be relaxed enough in the moment to say, oh, sorry, I mean, and then you correct yourself. If you correct yourself, that's good. But if you don't correct yourself and you continue to make that error, then that's when you're going to lose some points on pronunciation. So why am I talking about the grade breakdown? The reason that I'm talking about this is because of our old example from last time, where I was discussing maybe an older couple compared to a caregiver who they're both trying to get into Canada. In this case, we're going to do something similar, and we're going to talk about someone who's in the caregiver program compared to someone who's looking for a master's degree. We were just talking to Thais. We were saying that even for her situation, she wants to get the most points possible, so she needs the highest score possible. The highest score possible is a band 9. You know what perfect English sounds like. You're speaking fluently, a lot of or maybe there's only rare repetition or rare self-correction, so very few errors. You are comfortable with all kinds of vocabulary. You're using language naturally and accurately. You feel casual. You feel relaxed. You're using the right structures for grammar, your right tenses. You have a variety of tenses, and your pronunciation is excellent. So that's the top score, of course. That's easy to predict. Someone with a band 9, for example, Thais, she could end up in Canada absolutely with that score. It's a great score. But also someone in the caregiver program will be just fine with a band 4. That's less than 50% of this test. You cannot respond without a lot of pauses. You speak slowly. There's a lot of repetition. You're only using basic sentences. You don't have a wide variety of grammatical structures. You have limited pronunciation. So maybe for some of us who are listening, this is surprising because depending on the lifestyle that you want, the work that you want, whatever your path is to get into Canada, we're all writing a similar test. Someone with a band 4 could actually be in a better position than someone with a band 9, but doesn't have a program or doesn't have an idea about what they want to do. If anybody does have a plan who's listening today, Send me a message if you want to talk more about the scoring. I don't have all the different scores listed in the conversation today, but they're really easy to find on the IELTS website. Go and look and think about your own skills. If you read the description for band 6 and it sounds like you, hopefully on your good day, you have a band 6. Definitely pay attention to the way that the test is being graded for you. It can change everything. So if you don't listen to anything else that I say here, this is the main idea that we want to fix today, okay? We were talking about how the general test, last time, we were talking the general test is kind of like survival level English. Can you survive in Toronto or Vancouver or wherever you are in Canada? But I need to be clear, because survival or general English is not the same as street English. When people confuse these two, they're never happy. So saying things like wanna, I wanna go, I'm gonna go, I'm trying to go. It's okay once or twice, but we're trying to show that we do understand the grammar underneath those kinds of words. So we want to speak the full word. We're not going to swear. If it happens once, okay. But phrases like, oh my God, that sucks, we're going to avoid them. Now, the reason for that is it's not like we're talking to the Pope, we're not talking to the president, but we're also not talking to our best friend that we've known forever. I have the words here, normal and non-disruptive. So what I really mean is we don't want to be offensive. We don't want to upset the person who's listening to our speaking. So these are things generally to avoid. I think these are all pretty obvious. The swearing, oh my God, that sucks. The casual English, I think that's obvious. But wanna, gonna, tryna, connecting our words a lot, this is something to avoid as well. That's sometimes surprising to people. I've been talking a lot about the complexity of vocabulary. Do I need to sound like a science book? No, you don't. You need to be specific with your words. In normal life in Canada, people are not speaking with academic vocabulary regularly. We want you to sound normal instead of super professional or super academic. Pauses. We all need time to think. You are not expected, when someone asks the question, you don't need to begin right away. Take some time, relax, breathe, take the pause. It's so important. That time belongs to you. If you rush, the vocabulary is not going to come as fast as it could, and you will regret it. We need to remember that our basic section 1 topics usually stay the same, and they're predictable. So by the time you take the test, your family, your city, your work, your country, your pets, all of these kinds of things, we should be able to speak about pretty well with our English. Some things that people don't always consider when they are anxious or nervous. We want to open our mouth wide for our pronunciation. So I mean really open our mouth wide, especially for some sounds that we're going to talk about. The TH sound, for example, our L sounds, our R sounds. We want to give the muscles in our mouth the chance to make that sound. Opening our mouth wide and almost giving emphasis or exaggeration. We don't want to sound weird, but we do want to open our mouth and give ourselves the chance for pronunciation. Also, intonation is a similar idea. If you're giving an answer that was highly emotional, speak that way. Show us that you understand that your language has emotions attached to it. Go up, go down. If you're asking a question, use the correct up or down intonation associated with that. And then finally, a clear ending to the answers is useful. The person who's listening to you wants to know when you are totally done. So having your intonation go off in such a way where we never know, well, that's not going to work, right? Because the person will be confused. Are you continuing or are you not continuing? So having a clear finish, trust yourself. When you're done, you're done. Hopefully, if you've been training well, you'll be able to feel the time and you'll know that you did the right time. at this point in your practice, when it's time for you to go take the test, you should be able to do these activities. These are activities actually that I use for Portuguese practice, for French practice. They're free and they're easy and they don't require really anything other than a pencil and some paper. So the 2-minute English workout is kind of a funny name, but it is a workout. It uses all your English skills. You should be able to watch 2 minutes of your favorite TV show, a news program. Some people like children's shows because of the vocabulary. You should be able to listen and write down every word you hear. Then you go back to your 2 minutes. You turn on the subtitles or the captions. You check your writing and you correct it. You make sure that everything is perfect. If there was something that wasn't perfect, we listen again until we understand. Then finally, we go back to the beginning again. And the most important part, we speak with the speaker in the speaker's voice. We steal, we take their intonation, their accent. Choose a character who has a beautiful accent that you love because you get to choose how you practice, how you speak your English. Use their accent if you like the way that it sounds. As far as accent training goes, this is the most useful thing to do. It's a little bit of acting. It could be fun. It could be uncomfortable, but I promise you that this activity is super challenging. You can do it in 10 to 15 minutes. You can do it before work, and then you've already done your practice for the day, at least a warm up. And then finally, the second one here, 1, 2, 3, 5, 10-minute talks, however long you want to train for. Your section 2 of the IELTS speaking, you got to speak for 2 minutes. So that's a good place to start, right? In the past, I would have my students look out a window and they could speak for 2 minutes about anything they see. Then we bring them into the classroom. Now you have 2 minutes just about the classroom. Okay, there's less items for me to talk about inside the classroom. Then we put 5 minutes on the clock and you need to speak for more time about the classroom again. So this is a totally different idea because 2 minutes talking about the classroom, sure, we talk about the desks, the tables, the computers, whatever. But 3, 4, 5 minutes, wow, now I'm really thinking about different kinds of vocabulary. I'm talking about the color of the walls, the lighting, what kind of floor I have, the other people in the classroom. I'm searching for vocabulary to continue my fluency. When you find a word that you don't know in English, you write it down, and that's your homework for later. Hopefully, at the end of that day, if you've translated those words and you understand how to use them, if you give yourself the same challenge where you talk about the same classroom for 2 minutes, hopefully you use that newly discovered vocabulary. So if you're one of these people who feels like you never have the words for the world around you, that activity is perfect vocabulary discovery. It will increase your English because it's about your life, right? If anybody likes these kinds of activities, take them from here, take a screenshot, or just message me, and I'll send you a bunch of stuff that you can do. And of course, those common topics we should be able to talk about for quite some time. Work life, hometown, weather, whatever it is. Talk about your dog for a couple minutes. Whatever it is, those common topics, we want to just have them at 100% because those are the easy ones. So now for the good stuff. For our friends from Brazil here, pronunciation does not need to be a big, scary idea. It doesn't need to be confusing. This one, I think we're all familiar with, the idea of restaurant or restaurant. The listener for your test is going to hear that if you make the H sound. We will never do that in English. But that kind of idea opens us up to other kinds of typical errors that we might find. So for example, L sounds. In English, we will never make our lips round for the L. So in Brazil, when we're speaking Portuguese, we'll say Brasil with a U at the end. But for English, Brazil. My lips do nothing. The ill sound comes from the back of my mouth. It's called a dark L. It's a very useful thing to think about. L sounds, not just for people from Brazil, our friends from Korea and Japan definitely should be thinking about this as well. as well as our TH sounds. This, that, these, those, the things. We have a voiced sound and a voiceless, suggesting that we have a sound like v and a sound like f. Both of them are hard. It doesn't get any easier without the practice. It's an uncomfortable thing, but there is some happiness here. There is some cool stuff that we can do. If you take a video of yourself with no sound, saying this, that, these, those, you should be able to see your tongue. Your tongue needs to come out of the mouth, and it's uncomfortable and it's weird to practice, but a couple weeks of this is amazing. I had a student from the past who, when she would go in Toronto on the bus to her work, she would just sit and she would say, this is that and that is this, just practicing the TH sounds. And she would message me saying, like, people think I'm crazy, but my TH sounds are amazing, right? So like, who cares what the people on the bus think about you? If you have your TH sounds, that's a huge separation between people who are really doing it with the language and people who always struggle. There is a difference here. I also had a conversation with a lady who told me how much she enjoys gin. And I'm thinking gin is alcohol, right? So I'm asking her, do you drink a martini? Do you make a cocktail? She looks at me like I'm the crazy guy, right? And she's like, no, the gin, like exercise. And of course, the M's and the N's, they will change everything, right? We're supposed to be talking about exercise. I'm talking about having a drink. We can't mix up our M and N sounds. S and SHs, I think, maybe I'm wrong about this, but especially our friends from Rio, we hear a lot of like Christmas instead of Christmas. The only time we'll hear the sh sound in English is if we have the SH or maybe the SCH is possible. So we have to be careful. If it's the S alone, we want the S sound. Teeth on teeth, pushing air in between. S. Past verb pronunciation is a huge one. Do we want to say walked or do we want to say walked? There are rules for this. There are ways that you can memorize that and fix it very quickly. Do we say played or do we say played, right? And then of course we have a word like greeted where the ED is pronounced as id. So we have a T sound, a D sound, and an id sound. This seems confusing, but once you understand the rule, you realize it can only be those three. The rule is always true. It's more of a pronunciation thing that if you are interested, once again, I'll send you a lot of information about it. We won't talk about it here, maybe in the future. We'll chat about it, but it's something to keep in mind. We also have extra vowel sounds. Is something fun or something funny? If it's fun, we're excited, we feel good. If it's funny, we are laughing. So the roller coaster, is it fun or funny? It's fun because we're excited. Having that extra E sound is really common, once again, to be avoided. Same thing, our vowel sounds inside the word. Are we saying the word pull or are we saying the word pool? This last one is a great example because are you riding a horse or are you riding a hearse? A horse is the animal. A hearse is like the funeral car where it takes people to the cemetery. If you're on a horse at a funeral, people will be pretty confused. But if you said, yeah, the weekend was cool, I rode a hearse, that's also kind of strange because you're probably talking about a horse, right? The vowel sounds inside the word are just as important as anywhere else. Definitely pay attention to this. Absolutely pay attention. Hill, heel, pull, pool, vowel sounds, so important. Finally, and I promise I'm going to stop talking after this, the relevance and the direct nature of your speaking. Quality is more important than quantity. We have three different answers here. Which of these is the best, or are they all acceptable? If in section 1, the tester says, do you like the rain? And someone says, no, not really. It makes me depressed. So that's person 1. Person 2 says, yes, I do, but I understand why maybe someone else would not. That's person 2. Now person 3. No, I don't like the rain at all. In the past, when I was young, we spent a long time planning my sister's wedding. I had the special job of decorating the tables and dance floor. I was so careful and I was so thoughtful about everything, but it was an outdoor wedding and nobody thought about the weather. It rained, my decorations were ruined. My sister still got married, so I suppose all is well that ends well, but I was so upset about the weather that day. So this is a lot more detail than the first 2. All of these answers are totally acceptable. For the third person who said the longer answer with the details, they have a nice little phrase here that's pretty casual. Steal that from me, that's great. But the thing to keep in mind is all of these sentences answer the actual question. We're not talking about something that is not related to rain. So if I ask you about, hey, do you work alone? And you say, no, I work with a team. And then you start talking about how there's problems with your boss or there's problems with one of your team members. We're getting away from the question because it's not about who's the worst guy that you work with. The question is, do you work alone or do you work with other people? So stay focused. If you want to provide details, that's great, but make sure it's focused on the question, okay? Now, so I'm hoping that my student is in the chat here. Patricia, if you're here, would you mind just sending me a message? Yeah, here we go. So we're going to try out a sample question. We're going to try out the first section from what we looked at right away. Patricia has been working from probably like between a 7 to some situations we've had a perfect 9. So she's very much high achieving. It's a little bit of a weird situation here today, but we're going to see what happens as a good example just for section 1. Patricia, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you so much. Are you nervous?
Yeah, a little bit.
That's normal and understandable. Don't be nervous. We're all friends here. Let's take a moment just to relax, okay? Because we don't need to rush just because we're nervous. Let's relax with the questions. Maybe you're already seeing the questions, so you're a little bit prepared, but are you ready?
I'm ready. We can start.
Okay, here we go. So, do you live on your own or do you live with your family?
These days, I don't live with my family, but I also don't live alone. I'm currently living with my boyfriend. We share an apartment.
Okay. Do you have a big family?
I would say I have a medium-sized family. I say this because my immediate family is just my mom, my dad, my brother, and I. But I have a lot of aunts and uncles in my extended family on both sides.
Okay, nice, nice. Immediate family, extended family, nice vocabulary. How close do you live to your family members?
I'm currently living downtown São Paulo, and most of my family lives outside the city. Because of the traffic in the city, it can take a really long time to drive to visit them. So it doesn't happen a lot.
Okay.
Some of my other family members live in the south of Brazil, and that's very far from where I live here.
Okay, nice. How about your favorite family member? Do you have a favorite family member?
Absolutely. My younger brother is my favorite family member. We are always fighting when we were younger, but now we seem to be the only people who truly understands each other.
Nice. How about emotionally? Are you close with your family in the emotional sense?
I'm not emotionally close to all my family members, but some of them I'm super close to. Like I said, I'm close to my brother, but I'm also pretty close with my mom and one of my uncles. These are the people that I can really depend on.
Okay, okay. Just 1 second, I gotta take a note here. And then finally, how about for the holidays? What kind of holidays are most important for you and your family members?
I think we are just like a typical family in Brazil. Christmas is very important for the family to come together, and the New Year's as well. But really, we don't wait for the holidays to come for us to celebrate. We do barbecues on the weekends, sometimes dinners, and visits whenever we can. We don't focus on the holiday as much as we focus on spending time together whenever it's available.
Okay, okay, Patricia. That was good. How did that feel for you?
I'm glad it's done now, but I think I did okay.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Okay, so if Patricia and I were in our private class, let's look at some of the ideas that we would talk about. Okay, so as always, I'm taking a lot of notes here, but so we were just talking about our M's and our N's, right? So the word medium, we were talking about medium-sized family. Medium compared to median, these are different words. So the median is maybe the middle number in a group of numbers, or it's the middle part of the road. We have to be careful with the M's and the N's, just like we talked about. I like a lot to hear the immediate family compared to extended family. Nice specific vocabulary associated with family. Lexical resource score? Yes, absolutely. We had a little bit of problems with the word currently. Maybe that's a hard one with the sound in the middle of the word, but currently, that r sound in the middle is so important. Two of the things that we were just talking about with vocabulary is, let's think about the difference maybe between the word city, the place where I live, compared to seedy. So seedy is a word that would be referring to a part of town or a part of the city that is not so nice compared to city. The only real difference here is the I sound in city compared to the E sound in seedy. So we have to hold on to those kinds of small pronunciation ideas. The vowel sounds, it can change everything, right? A smaller idea where we had a word like these, where we have our voiced th, but the most common error that people make with the voiced th is the D sound. So I think this is something that came in with Patricia being a little bit nervous with everyone here listening, because she usually is perfect with this. But saying D's instead of these, that's a big one. The tester is definitely going to hear that. So pronunciation score, maybe we lost a little something there. And then finally, a really small grammatical idea. So I think Patricia was talking about her brother. We're the only people who truly understands each other. The S on understands, we're not going to use the S because we have our subject we. So we are the only people who truly understand each other. The third person S, although it is very, very challenging for a lot of people, it's a common error that keeps coming up, but it's considered a basic to intermediate thing. So as far as grammatical range goes, we probably lost a point there. But overall, Patricia, excellent. Thank you for participating so much. I know it was awkward. Thank you. That was good.
You're welcome.
How do you feel about your score? Where do you think you landed today?
I think it was like a 6.5.
I would say that you were being a little conservative. I think you landed a 7 to a 7.5 today. For this section, of course, right? There's three sections here. We've heard you pretty consistently being at the 7 and above level. If you were to test today, there's no doubt in my mind that it would be at least a 7. But of course, things change for the section 2 and section 3. Patricia, how do you feel about the section 1 compared to the other questions? Are you the most comfortable with section 1? Are you more comfortable with something else?
I think the section 1 is the easiest.
Absolutely, right? The direct kinds of questions.
Yeah.
So a big thank you again to Patricia. But let's see if there's anyone else who's brave, okay? We've already talked a little bit to Thais. Thais, if you want to try it out, you can, no pressure, okay? But here's the deal. If someone does want to try one of these topics, you can choose whichever one. Here's what I'll do. In the conversation, I'll give you what I consider to be a general score, but I am going to take notes about what you're saying. If you leave me your email, if you participate, I'll send you a score with a breakdown of the things that I heard in your speaking and the things that I think that you could improve pretty quickly, or maybe with more practice, I'll send you some activities, some ideas, stuff like that.